We got Paul Kuharsky on today's podcast talking through the new pairing of Mike Borgonzi and Chad Brinker, the Titans process, what it looks like from an optics standpoint when Amy Adams Strunk doesn't speak to the media, when Chad Brinker holds a press conference that's not recorded on audio or video. We're getting into all this now, and also, what is Brian Callahan's role in this new alignment structure? We're going to get into it right now. This is the Music City Audible. Let's get to it. Welcome everyone to another episode of the Music City Audible podcast presented by Broadway Sports Media in partnership with 440 Sports. I'm Justin Graver. With me, as always, Justin, Melo, and Justin. We got a great guest on today's show to continue talking through the new organizational structure and the new era of Tennessee Titans football. How's it going?
I'm doing well, man. Excited about this. I don't know that PK's ever been on this show. I don't think he has.
He's never been on this show, and he was never on the previous iteration of our show that we don't really ever talk about or mention.
We did that for a couple months. It was bullshit, but I don't think even on that one. No, I don't think we've ever had PK on.
Agreed. Yeah, we never have. So it was great to talk to him. I'm somebody who grew up reading his stuff, who grew up listening to him on the radio, and
absolutely.
I've always thought he was, the premier top level of people covering the Titans in that group. So I'm thrilled to get Paul on the show today. What's up?
Mount Rushmore is like PK, Wyatt, and Glennon. But Mount Rushmore got 4 people on it?
It does, but
we got to knock one off because I don't think anyone belongs up there with PK, Wyatt, and Glennon.
Yeah, we'll just mash our faces together and put that as the 4th one for this podcast. No, just kidding. But yeah, no, I agree that he definitely would make up the Mount Rushmore of Titans beat guys. So really excited to talk to him today. I think we had a great conversation just going through what he thinks of this new organizational structure, some recent articles he's written about, to pump the brakes if you're a Titans fan on the excitement level because we were this excited for Rand Carthon, and what he thinks about Brian Callahan. I think that's the most interesting part is how does Brian Callahan fit into this when he doesn't have a working relationship really with Mike Borgonzi and a very limited one with Chad Brinker. So excited to get to that conversation. But first, Justin, we got to do a segment that we call I'll Drink to That, brought to you by Sinkers Beverages in East Nashville. And here's what I'm drinking to today, Justin, because we're recording this. We talked to PK last Friday. So this is coming out a little after we talked to PK, but also something that happened last Friday. The whole Jacksonville Jaguars have melted down into a ludicrous operation over there. They wouldn't fire Trent Baalke. They miss out on the top 2 head coaching candidates. Then they do fire Trent Baalke. Liam Coen had already turned them down. They fire Baalke. He turns the plane around, meets with them in secret so that the Bucs don't find out that he's meeting with them, so that Patrick Graham doesn't find out that he's meeting with them, so that Patrick Graham will go satisfy their Rooney Rule requirements, making a whole mockery of the process. Shad Khan is just out of his mind. Liam Coen, great job as an offensive coordinator in multiple stops around the NFL. Has he proven that he can...
Well, just Tampa Bay, not multiple stops. That's not true.
LA, he was passing game.
It didn't go well in LA, didn't it? Wasn't he there just the 1 year? And it was the year they lost Stafford to the injury and they were terrible.
And he also went...
just one good stop.
He went back to Kentucky after that LA Rams year to be the offensive coordinator there. And that's when he had Will Levis.
Yes.
And we've had Liam Coen on this show, and I have a lot of respect for Liam Coen as an offensive mind. He
blew us away when he was on here.
But at the same time, I think it's absolutely ludicrous that the Jags would offer him Ben Johnson money to be their head coach when Ben Johnson has been the top candidate for 2 cycles in a row and has been extremely selective. And this felt a lot like the owner of the Jags, Shad Khan, hitting the red panic button because he kept missing out on candidates, and he didn't want to miss out on another one. So he just opened up the checkbook to get his guy. And I am drinking to, as dysfunctional as you think the Titans may or may not be, I am drinking to the massive dysfunction that is the Jags franchise right now.
Yeah, and Coen, it's totally different than Johnson, right? Because I don't think it would be fair to say Coen was selective at all, right? I mean, the first team that said we'll fire our GM and write a blank check, like most candidates, I think would take that, right? Let's be honest. But you're right. He hasn't been selective for 2-3 off seasons in a row and said this is the right one. He's probably a little bit stunned, that Jacksonville's kind of willing to do all they're willing to do to get him. And that's why he feels like he can't pass up the opportunity. I don't blame him for it one bit. Teams are assholes too. It sounds like he might have been a bit of an asshole, but so are teams. So it's like, I get kind of taking it while striking while the iron's hot, but it makes Jacksonville look terrible. And look, maybe I'm too good of a person, too naive, but I like to always think that the Rooney Rule really is taken seriously by the league, but there are teams that probably skirt it every year. But you want to talk about making a total debacle, a mockery of it. I don't know that anyone's done worse than Jacksonville just did, right? Like holding this meeting in secret for two reasons. Number one, so he wouldn't cancel, I guess. So Patrick Graham wouldn't cancel. And number two, so Tampa wouldn't find out, right? But total mockery of the Rooney Rule. I'm telling you, how are they not satisfied it already? They've had the opening forever. Like just the whole process is just embarrassing. But we'll drink to it, that's for sure.
Yeah, we'll drink to it. And I mean, like you said about Liam Coen taking the opportunity, striking while the iron's hot, you look at what happened to across the division in Houston. Bobby Slowick was interviewing for head coaches this time, coaching jobs this time last year. I think he did one interview this cycle, possibly. I think that's right, with the Jets, maybe.
The Jets interviewed everyone, so probably. I interviewed with the Jets. I didn't tell anyone.
And now you did it in secret, like Liam Coen. And now he's been fired. Bobby Slowick has. So that's how quickly your star can go out.
Byron Leftwich?
Byron Leftwich, same.
Not even in the league right now.
Of course, Liam Cohen's going to take the opportunity when he can, but as you said, we'll drink to the massive dysfunction in Jacksonville. I'll drink to that, brought to you by Sinkers Beverages, the premier wine, spirits, and beer store in East Nashville, serving the community since 1985. Their knowledgeable staff is proud to help you with large parties, themed events, or finding something unique for a special occasion. From birthday parties to milestone celebrations to everyday moments, Sinkers can help with the right drink for every occasion. And if you head to the sinkersbeverages.com website or click on the link in this podcast description, you can join the in-crowd. In-crowd members get access to allocated wines and spirits, exclusive events, early access to barrel releases, and more. Justin, I can do that read from memory by now. Is that impressive or scary?
You know what's funny? I think every time you start, I'll drink to that, and you go to hit your button or whatever, it takes you a little longer, I think, every week. It's hilarious. So, like, we got to hit, and then you lean over for like 9 seconds, and then you hit the button because you're looking at all the buttons.
Well, today I had my board, so that's like there's pages on the board, and I had it on my Heed the Call page because right before this we recorded a Heed the Call episode, and then I forgot to flip it to the MCA board that has.
What buttons do you have on the? There's got to be like 2 of them, I imagine, on the MCA page.
Yeah, I've got a new one actually.
Tighten up.
That's Mike Borgonzi saying "tighten up" at his introductory press conference. I've got this one from Silver Linings, which we haven't done in a while because we haven't been recapping games really. And then I've got obviously our favorite one,
Tighten down.
And I'll drink to that. So I got 4.
4 buttons on the MCA page. I love it.
But yeah, so anyway, I'll drink to that. And now let's talk to Paul Kuharsky. How's that sound?
That sounds like a great idea.
All right. Without further ado, we are thrilled to be joined by Paul Kuharsky. PK, as he's known around these parts. Find his stuff at paulkuharsky.com. And I grew up reading Paul's stuff on ESPN, so this is a kind of a surreal treat moment for me here.
A little bit.
Paul, thanks for joining us today. How's it going?
Great to be with you guys. Good to know you've read me when you were a little kid. Sound a billion years old, but I am getting up there.
I mean, I was a midday 180 listener from Los Angeles, California, tuning into the streaming version back in the day. So really appreciate you joining us here today. We're going to talk through some of these Titans organizational alignment, new general manager stuff. And first things first, what do you make of the Mike Borgonzi, Chad Brinker tandem, the introduction, the last few days, how everything went down? Because you wrote a great article telling Titans fans maybe pump the brakes a little bit, which I think is fair based on the recent history. So what are your overall thoughts on this pairing?
Well, I'd say, that general manager introduction is generally going to be a happy occasion. And it was for Borgonzi. And he seems like a good and qualified guy. I have no reason to doubt he is. I have friends in the league who know him and speak highly of him. And I expect him to be good. But I think, it's wise to approach these things with caution based on the Titans' recent record with them. Plenty of people had great things to say about Rand Carthon, and Rand Carthon was an absolute dud. And we could discuss the good and the bad of him, but overall it was bad, really bad. And that's not just the personnel stuff, which probably is a little bit better than his biggest detractors would say. But the overall body of what he did and how he operated was bad enough to get him fired in 2 years. And, get fired in 2 years, you have to do some bad work and rub some people the wrong way. So it's fine to be a little bit optimistic about Borgonzi. I think in these parts, people, want to jump very quickly to let Rand cook and put on chef's hats. I think John Robinson at least earned in J. Rob we trust with some very good early work. He drafted 3 guys who turned out to be all pros. I doubt that Ray and Carthon's people are going to wind up having those sort of accolades attached to them. And, I'd say don't rush to be this. I understand fans are fanatics and all of that, but the football's in September. And so the signings may come and the draft may come and you may be excited about those guys. But every time I'm going to encourage people to tap the brakes and wait and see results. And when you see results, then you can tab people as good or bad. But in the meantime, place everybody on hold, on the buttons on stream now. It used to be on your tape recorder or your CD player. There's a play and a fast forward and a rewind and there's pause. And this team should be put on pause.
Yeah, I mean, no more proof than that in this past offseason, right? When everyone was certainly celebrating the spending spree that they went on to win 3 games. I
was guilty of that as well, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think I was slower than most people, but I was also encouraged by that stuff, too encouraged. And the year before, run it back with Vrabel, and I had faith in Vrabel and all that. So fool me twice, shame on me.
No doubt. I think for me, PK, I think I'm encouraged by the tandem, certainly from a football acumen standpoint. Certainly I think the resumes are impressive, but the process to get here probably leaves some to be desired, right? And I kind of want to pick your brain on that. And I used a good example the other day, at least I think it was a good example, where people forget about process if the results are good. And I kind of cited Washington, people have already forgotten that, they wanted Ben Johnson last offseason. They were left at the altar by him and circled back to Dan Quinn, and now they're in the NFC Championship game. So certainly process will be forgotten if this ends up well. But what do you think about the process to get here? It's certainly some questions about how messy it all seems to have gone down.
Yeah, well, it's hard to believe in any process that Amy Adams Strunk's behind right now for how impetuous she is and that she doesn't answer for it. I think the biggest question is, why is Chad Brinker the guy to run the football side of the organization? And there was no official hiring of Chad Brinker because he was hired behind the scenes as an assistant general manager, right? Well, they didn't put out a big statement about assistant general manager. We didn't get a big statement about Anthony Robinson. We didn't get a big statement about Chad Brinker. And so now in 2 years, he ascends to, in 1 year, he ascends to president of football operations, a title that never existed in the organization before. And in the second year, he's got that title. Plus he's master of all football decisions. And I think if we could ask one big question overriding, we'd like to hear from Amy Adams Strunk on why. What are the qualities that he has on his resume, and what are the things he's done in these 2 years that indicate to you that he's the man to run the football operation? I think if we could get a good answer to that, if she has a good answer to that, I don't know that I'm going to be quote unquote comforted by anything Amy Adams Strunk says at this point, based on how much faith and how much cause there's been to lose faith in her. But if we could get an answer to that question, I think it would go a long way towards understanding what exactly they're doing.
Yeah, it's interesting because one of the criticisms I think of Amy Adams Strunk through this whole process is her refusal to speak to the media. And I wonder if you have any further thoughts on maybe a why behind that, which I think it's fine if she wants to be in the shadows as an owner. But then if that's the case, we shouldn't get reports out that she pushed the team to draft Will Levis, which we heard a lot of in the last year or so. It's either take a step back and let the football people you put in place run the organization, or if you're going to be involved, come forward and talk to your fans and the media who covers the team. What do you make of the whole process of Amy Adams Strunk trying to now be sort of a hidden figure behind the scenes after she had spoken before? Yeah, Justin?
It's not just that, Graver, I think, too, right? It's also that she's been present when they were winning, right? So I think that's...
And I pushed that the other day. She is out tailgating, high-fiving, and taking pictures with people who mistakenly made her out to be a hero. She did heroically save the team from Tommy Smith, so there's a little bit of that. But fans go overboard, I understand. But I asked this question to Chad Brinker. The team, especially Vrabel, sold that we don't like front runners, and she's behaved like a front runner. She's out front when they're doing well, She's disappeared when they're doing poorly. And I'm pretty sure if they won the Super Bowl, she'd be on the stage accepting the trophy and doing the speaking. She wouldn't be letting Brinker and Burke Nihill do the talking for the Titans if they were on that platform with CBS or Fox or somebody collecting that trophy. I used to speak to her occasionally, privately. At 2 owners meetings, I think I did. She's engaging and pleasant. Something may have flipped during COVID. I don't know. She doesn't want to face tough questions. She's officially now delegated this to Brinker and Nihill. Nobody really knows. I don't believe, by the way, for a second that she pushed Will Levis specifically. She may have indicated to them that she wanted a quarterback. The team clearly needed a quarterback post Ryan Hill, so that was not some revolutionary ownership push towards something that was obviously going to happen from her. But I think we've mixed in too much of this, have heard from inside the building versus have heard from a caller into the zone and mashed those things together. I mean, I think Zach Lyons wrote a very good piece maybe a month ago now about all the things that we heard, but he mixed together Buck reported this and Paul reported that, and we've heard this in calls into the station, and those things don't belong together.
Yeah, it's interesting. And on the subject of Brinker speaking for Amy, I want to know what you think about the private press conference that they held, because to me, there seemed to be a lot of hand-wringing about the fact that Brinker was going to speak with no cameras and microphones. It's not going to be recorded. It's not going to be put out there except for the people who are there covering it. It felt like people were upset about that, like thinking he had something to hide. I had a different take on it, and I want to get your thoughts.
Well, nothing personal, but I think it's a misnomer to call it a private press conference. There are 21 press in the room. It's not private. My tape recorder's running. I'm taking notes. I'm asking aggressive questions. And so were 20 other people. It's not private. I mean, people don't like the way it's delivered. I mean, it's not ideal. It's bad optically and all of that. I think it's great. Yeah,
that's what I was going to say. That was my take on it, was like, this harkens back to a pre-COVID era where reporters can go into the locker room and talk to a player and get a quote. Now, obviously it's a little different because, like you said, all 20 people or whatever are there.
Scope is big and the time is important, right? But and people are not going to like the comparison because Brian Callahan is on camera Sunday after the game, Monday and Wednesday, and for a little bit on Friday. But the most fruitful and nuanced information and answers that people read from Brian Callahan all season long came out of 20 or 25 minutes off camera on Friday afternoons, or from the sessions during training camp where we sat with him with no cameras and just tape recorders running during training camp. And people don't want to get their heads around it. They don't want to hear it. They feel entitled to see and hear everything. I understand that's the way it's become. But a guy's a lot more comfortable, generally speaking, without cameras in his. It just changes the vibe of the conversation. Now, part of that's that Chad Brinker's just not comfortable in those situations yet, and maybe he never will be. But I think we did get better answers out of him, and everybody knows everything that he said. You just didn't get to know it live and in the moment. Oh my God, you got to wait 10 minutes for some tweets. And oh my God, you got to wait, 3 hours for some stories. I mean, it was not the end of the world. And I'm not going to, that's not my fight to fight. I'm a print journalist. I love to have interviews with people that you don't hear. I had 4 yesterday to put together a good story on, the Titans' new grading system, most of which didn't come from inside the Titans building, but you could trace like where these things come from. And I have some sources around the country who helped me trace where these things come from. And I think people, when they heard Brinker say, when Mike Borgonzi says he's a 59, I know what a 59 is. And I managed to write a piece telling you what, in fact, a 59 is, which is really a 5.9, and how a 5.9 is different than what the Titans have been calling a guy the last 2 years.
I'll be honest with you, Graver, and I think you'll feel the same way. Like for me, if Paul and the press, the people who are actually there in that room with him, if they're fine with the way that it's delivered, then everyone should be fine the way it's delivered, because it should only matter to the people who are there for that information, right? So it's
that's my take too. Like it makes it a little harder. Yeah, it makes it a little harder for you and I, Justin, covering the team from a long ways away to report on this, but that's okay. We
That's
rely on
not
the
my
beat. We're not
concern,
at any
to be
press
honest
conference.
with you. It's
yeah.
I want the people who are there. It's if Paul had a problem with it and everyone else got a problem with it, then it's bad. You know what I mean? Because they're the ones who are there on the beat. So
And you guys are much
no one
more
should be making it a
reasonable.
big deal.
You guys are much more reasonable, reflective tier of outside coverage. There's like us who are there. There's a tier of you guys who are kind of thoughtful and deliberate analyzers of what you see and hear. And then there are the aggregators who are immediate. Now, this is the worst day in history for them, because what usually happens is we might tweet out a snippet of audio and they can have a whole story up off that piece of audio before we're even back in the press room. And they feel like they're actually doing something. Oh, here's what Chad Brinker said. They act like they were in the room. Some idiots out there believe that they were in the room, and they've got a whole piece written about what Chad Brinker said before Chad Brinker's done talking. So before we leave the third room of the Titans building, we're being, quote unquote, beat on our own stuff, which is, one of the most frustrating things. I think a lot of us tweet a lot less video for that very reason.
Makes sense.
Totally fair. Yeah, totally fair. Like Graver said, we appreciate the compliment because I think it's, what we try to do is obviously be more analytical, right? And give an opinion instead of just, well, this is what happened and here's the report because we were there. I'm curious, Paul, how Brian Callahan fits into all this. I think that's what I might be most curious about, because we want to talk about them having alignment and with, Brinker and Borgonzi. But do they have alignment all the way through? Do you feel he's truly aligned with them? Or is this John Robinson, entertaining Amy Adams Strunk for a year before firing Mike Mularkey kind of thing?
I think it's got to be more than that. I mean, you could argue about whether Brinker's insulated or not. I think he's really insulated. He answered that question saying that he thinks he's the most out front and the most at risk. I thought he had a good answer to the question. I just don't buy it. But Callahan's most at risk. His fingerprints are most on the win-loss record, and he's got that 3-win season hanging over him. But look, they need to turn the results around, and you don't turn the results around if you don't include the coach in the process, right? They hired him. People forget, 5 teams were interested in Brian Callahan. 2 other teams wanted him back. Carolina and Arizona wanted second interviews with him that the Titans prevented by hiring him. He'd be a head coach somewhere else if he wasn't a head coach in Tennessee. Who knows how things would have gone in those places. But you can't be giving your head coach people that he doesn't want or doesn't believe in. Particularly, he's got to be, they have to come to a 3-way agreement on what they're doing at quarterback, which I suspect is going to be a bridge guy as they shoot towards gathering these picks. I have another story up today about this idea of 30 picks with 12 in the top 100 over the course of 3 seasons. Like I looked at 2021 through 2024, has not happened. Nobody's reached those benchmarks. A couple teams have come close. But if you're going to reach those benchmarks, you're probably dealing out a number one to get anywhere close. It seems like a favorable thing to do. You could trade not that far out of it and still acquire a lot, let somebody else love the quarterbacks who don't seem great, still get maybe not a generational player, but a very, very good player high. But I think you got to be, married to Brian Callahan here. You can't make decisions independent of him thinking, well, he might not be our guy long term here if things don't go well. Automatically, you're fracturing things. And how's that look to the next guy?
I think what I guess concerns me about that to a degree is you can do both. Like when I hear you say, oh, they might go the bridge quarterback route, I have a hard time, seeing this team winning more than, 6-7 games next year, for example. And there's a lot to be determined. But if they go the bridge quarterback route, it's hard to see them really, really elevating themselves. And if they're going to take the patient approach and they want all those picks, you've got to make some sacrifices, as you said, right? That's trading down, and that is kicking the can down the road, right? So I just don't know. I don't have faith that they can implement their slow build plan And yet Brian Callahan survives that, because typically a slow build plan comes with another year or two of struggle.
Well, I don't have faith, like I said early, in anything until it's proven. But if they were a 6-7 win team next year with a bridge, having stock draft picks, having had a good draft in this draft with more picks, and having gotten themselves, if not a first, at least, then a second and a third next year, you could argue they could go to Amy and say, we're on our way towards the slow build. Chad has patience. We're going into a third year of Callahan, who's clearly gotten something more out of a quarterback and an older guy. And now we're gonna look towards the younger guy and whatever. But the 30 pick thing is probably impossible if you're picking a quarterback somewhere in there. And doubtlessly they're picking a quarterback somewhere in there. I would think next year, where there's going to be more better things to choose from. And I don't think you're at any point you're getting a quarterback that's just appealing to Brian Callahan. Here's the problem. Blake Bedingfield pointed this out, I think, very smartly at paulkuharsky.com. To get a veteran quarterback to come to a place like Tennessee, that, like, if he comes with Callahan at the beginning, say, all right, well, I'm going to come help you with the culture rebuild, and maybe we'll take off together, right? But to come in second year when you've sucked, you're saying, well, it's an awfully big turnaround. There's going to be somebody coming in behind me pretty quickly to try to take the job, and I might be invested in Callahan, but he might be gone in a year. It's a much harder sell. Now, money's going to dictate a lot, but there are a lot of teams that need quarterbacks that are in situations like this where they're between or need somebody to hold down the fort until their rookie's ready or whatever. And it becomes a lot more difficult than it would have been a year ago, when I think they did the right thing and gave Will Levis, the rope to go see what they had. But that decision now, I think they've got all the evidence they need to make it. So it's a much tougher sell now. And most of the time people say, well, why would somebody come to Tennessee? I think that's nonsense. Most of the time it's nonsense with the GM. They landed a top candidate for GM, and they'll land good players, though they're going to be less aggressive in free agency. When you write the check, you write the check. If they decide we're going to get Trey Smith and then these lesser free agents that we've talked about who are akin to Mike DeVito and Anthony Fasano, or Sebastian Joseph Day, to put it in Titans terms, they'll get those guys. But the quarterback thing may be a lot more tricky.
Yeah. I think final one before we let you go, Paul, is the 30 pick thing. It's interesting because, as you said, great article on paulkuharsky.com, how it hasn't been done. I think the more important part of it is probably the 12 top 100, right? That's where you would really rebuild the roster, if you will. They've got 8 of them now. I keep seeing people say that over the next 3 years, they've got 8. You can give them a 9th because they've got 101 in this draft. So, I mean, if we're giving them the benefit of the doubt of 1 pick, they've got 9. If you trade down from 1 this year, you're probably getting that number to 11 already, right? So not that unattainable as some might think it is.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think, I would lean towards a likely trade down this year, which gets you there. The thing is, then next year you have to trade up to get the quarterback that we're all envisioning. The dream at this point would be an Arch Manning. You don't know what he's going to do or if he's going to stay. But boy, you'd like to get that bloodline involved in your organization. But whatever you're doing there, unless you're terrible for a second year in a row and your first round pick is first again or top 3 to position yourself. I mean, whoever's got number 1 next year is probably taking him. You never know how things pan out, but odds are high right now. If he wants to come out next year, he'd be the number 1 pick in the draft. Even if that team has a quarterback, either they're taking him or they're trading with somebody that's taking him. And if the Titans want to trade him to that pick, they'd be giving up some of this gained value that we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Paul, thank you so much for your time and your insight here. We really appreciate it. Enjoy Edley's barbecue. I know Justin wishes he was there right now. I kind of do too.
So what would I be eating if I was in Toronto today?
What would you be eating?
Poutine.
Yeah, you know what? The poutine. It's funny. I get into this argument with Americans that are like, "Man, the poutine thing. It's just so weird." And I'm like, "You guys will put anything on anything, and the second that we put some gravy and cheese on fries, you lose your mind. Like, are you kidding me?"
I'd eat that. But what is that like the Toronto thing? Like, what's the thing? Like barbecue?
No, I'll be honest with you. It's tough to say because Toronto's probably the most multicultural city in the world, right? Like I can go right now and like real examples. My neighbor to the right of me is Polish, to the left is Italian, across the street is Turkish. Like that's Toronto in a nutshell. So I can go get great Italian. I mean, Italian for sure, but you can get anything you want is the way I like to put it.
So I'm down for pierogi from the Polish.
They are delicious.
Sounds good. It's nice to be with you guys. Thanks for the invite.
All right. Thanks again to Paul Kuharsky there. That was a great conversation. I always love talking to Paul. The first time we've done it on the podcast, but I've met him in person at a couple Super Bowls and things, combine, things like that back when I worked for NFL Media. So it's always good to have him on, and thought he was great.
Yeah, he was fantastic. I mean, great to have him on, and he complimented us. I mean, that's pretty cool because if we sucked, Paul would tell us. He would tell us to our face, "You're awful."
He'd be like, "I hate you guys. You're aggregators who just take all my content." But no, he said, "You guys are thoughtful and analytical." It's like, wow, Paul Kuharsky. Thanks, buddy.
And he loves Titans of the South. I was worried he was the one person I was worried to show it to be honest with you, because he's rightfully, critical when it's time to be critical. So I'm glad
he's honest. Yeah. And he shouted out Zach Lyons, but he also gave him a little shit, which we love to do all the time. So that was fun.
Perfect. It was perfect.
Perfect appearance from a guest. All right. That'll do it. We'll be back later this week, I believe, with something I teased a few episodes ago. We got a great guest coming on to sell Titans fans on Cam Ward. You don't got to sell me. He's my number one player. I've only watched like a handful of players in the draft completely. But Cam Ward, I'm in love with Cam Ward, and I'll at this point be disappointed if the Titans go any other direction. Even if they trade back for a haul of picks and it sets them up well for like building out the future of the franchise, I'll still be disappointed because that's how much I like Cam Ward. Wow. Justin's going to push back on this entire thing, so it might be kind of fun to get some conflict going. But anyway, I'm excited for this episode. It's coming out later this week, so make sure you are subscribed to the Music City Audible podcast. Give this video a thumbs up, like, and drop a comment below. What did you think about what PK said? What do you think about the Jag situation? What do you think about Bobby Slowick? Let us know all your thoughts in the comments below, and we will be back later this week. So until then, you all stay safe out there and tighten up.
A Broadway sports media production.